There is increasing debate in the UK about whether social media should be banned for under 16s. And personally, from a personal perspective, as a parent, as a teacher, I'm not sure where I sit on that kind of debate yet. I'm still trying to kind of make
Mm.
my own mind up. But one recent suggestion, I can't remember her name. She's a psychologist. I saw her talking online, and she gave this analogy that I found really interesting around teens and social media access. And it was like she was recommending taking a kind of driving lesson approach. So we don't give kids, keys to the car that you're 17, here's your keys, off you go, go drive. We give them regular practice, we give them lots of support with us nearby, and over a period of time, once they can show us that they can drive independently, safely, and they pass a certain test, then they've got that independence. And she was recommending taking the similar kind of approach with children, teens, I don't know what age, but giving this graduated teaching, coaching support until they can show that they can be responsible online. And I just thought, what is your opinion about potentially banning social media for under 16s? Are there alternative approaches that might be more beneficial?
I'm fairly ambivalent about bans. I think the honest answer there is that we don't know what the impact of social media bans are because, um, relatively speaking, in kind of regulatory space, these are very new concepts, and there just isn't much in the way of research to support one way or another. That's not me saying I don't think they will work. That's not me saying I do think they'll work. I think the honest answer is we don't know. So, one line that I've kind of been taking a lot recently is that whatever you do decide, but whether we're talking about that as a school level in terms of phone bans in schools, or you're talking about this at a national level in terms of social media bans, whatever you decide to do, evaluate it, collect data before you do it, collect data while you're doing it, and collect data afterwards, because that will give us what we need to know in terms of what works, who it works for, what doesn't work, all of those sorts of things in what situations. And that's one of the things that we're really missing at the minute. That's one thing that Australia's doing. They're evaluating the social media ban over there, and if other countries follow suit with these sorts of bans, I'd really like them to follow suit in that way as well, and put in
Mm.
really robust, solid kind of evaluations of these sorts of legislations. If you do that thing of like taking a bit of a pause and a breathe and taking a step back and thinking about this space, hopefully you can start to see that there are more things that we can do as well.
Mhm.
And it's not necessarily one thing over another. We can do all of these things together, but we need to think about what the most effective thing to do is. And I think in order to try and answer that question, we need to figure out what is it that we're trying to achieve here. Um, and again, I think that's a relatively poorly defined problem at the minute. And sometimes we kind of get into these debates and arguments where the goalpost starts shifting, and it becomes very difficult to talk about this from an evidence perspective because we start talking about very different things. A smartphone ban in a school is very different to a nationwide social media ban. A
Mhm.
smartphone ban in a school because you're worried about mental health is a different thing to worry about than a smartphone ban in a school because you're worried about educational attainment, which again is a different thing to worry about in terms of a smartphone ban, so you can give kids space to play more
Mhm.
and to be kids. These are all
Yeah.
very different things. So I think what we need to do is really be specific about what concerns we have, what harms we're trying to address, and then that will help us think about what sorts of approaches might be the most useful, the most effective in different situations. I
Mm.
think so the driving analogy I think is a really good one, for lots of different reasons. What we're talking about there effectively is, yeah, you have a ban because you don't let kids under the age of 17 drive cars, right? But we don't stop kids from under the age of 17 from being in cars or being around cars. And that's where the education element comes
Mhm.
in. So any talk of kind of bans or restrictions for social media, in my mind, yes, definitely let's think about the most effective way to implement those. But we have to do that alongside thinking about how do we build better digital literacy skills, media literacy skills. There's a difference between knowing how a technology works versus knowing how to use a particular technology versus knowing why that technology works. And I
Mm.
think very often we confuse those things in this space, certainly for kids. They you hear the term digital natives a lot, which I think is a bit of a misnomer. It's a bit of a misrepresentation. Just because kids have grown up not knowing a world where phones and the internet doesn't exist doesn't mean that they automatically know how to use them effectively and responsibly. They might look really tech savvy in terms of their ability to use a touchscreen or to navigate the way around a computer or a games console. But again, that doesn't mean that they know how these things can go wrong or how other people might be interacting with them online. And I think that's why it's really important to talk about
Mm.
these sorts of literacy skills, to explain, how algorithms work, why they work, what they might be doing that isn't in your best interests, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And in terms of the car analogy, I was thinking about this a while ago, and when my daughter started school, one of the first things that I remember happening was that they had external lessons about how to cross the road safely. That's nothing to do with her being in a car or driving a car, obviously, but it's
Mm.
an acknowledgement that cars exist in society, and whether you're in them or not, they can have an impact on your lives, and we need to understand how to coexist with them effectively. So a lot of that is around education from an early age. You don't need to give a 5-year-old a phone in order to talk to them about how to use digital tech responsibly. And I think we need to be thinking more about what those sorts of initiatives look like as well. Or not more, but like just as loudly,
Yeah.
as kind of what we're considering in the restriction, the regulation space. Because those two things, to my mind, they absolutely have to go together. There's nothing magical about the age of 16. It's as arbitrary as the current age of 13. And again, we know from some research that essentially biological age doesn't matter in this space, that kids develop at different rates, and some kids might be 12 or 13 and very kind of capable and competent with certain types of tech. I know some 40-year-olds who probably shouldn't be allowed near social media. It is not kind of biological age dependent, but ultimately, there's no such thing as a perfect policy. It's going to have to be based on a biological age. That's fine, but we need to think about what scaffolding is around those sorts of restrictions so that when kids do get to that age, whatever we decide in the end, for whatever reason, again, like we were saying before, they're better prepared for entering that sort of digital society.